I was 20 when I was branded a rapist for a crime I never committed, until a single security camera clip set me free. I was only 20 years old when everything I thought I was, my future, my reputation, my very identity, was ripped away in a single thunderous knock at the door. It was a late October evening, and I had just returned from my shift stocking shelves at the grocery store. I remember the chill in the air, the warm glow of the porch light, and the easy confidence I felt as I fumbled for my keys. In that moment, I believed I had all the time in the world to figure out who I wanted to become. A split second later, my world shattered. 5 uniformed officers barged in, guns drawn, shouting, "Freeze! Hands where we can see them!" My palms went cold as I raised them, trembling, trying to process what was happening. What did I do?" I stammered, but they didn't answer. Instead, they cuffed my wrists so tight I could feel the metal biting into my skin and roughly pushed me toward their black and white cruiser parked on the street. I was a college dropout working part-time, with big dreams of becoming a photographer. I spent my days saving for a camera I hoped would capture the world's beauty. I never imagined I'd become a headline instead. Branded as a monster, I wasn't. As they shoved me into the back seat, I caught a glimpse of my parents' house through the tinted windows. Warm light spilling from the living room, my mom's favorite. Couch just inside. I wanted to scream for her, to tell her this was a mistake, but my voice was gone. On the way to the precinct, I watched the police scanner flashing on the cruiser's dashboard. Suspect in custody for aggravated rape. Look up identity. My name scrolled across the screen, bold and damning. My chest tightened as I realized they believed I had raped someone. A sense of disbelief flooded me. I had never so much as laid a hand on another woman without her full consent. Yet, every streetlight we passed seemed to echo that one word, rapist. When we arrived at the station, the fluorescent lights inside felt like punishment. I was processed, fingerprinted, photographed, under harsh bulbs, my name typed into the county computer. Jason Alexander Robinson. The arresting officer read off my mugshot card as though reciting the beginning of my doom. The reality set in. My life would never be the same. Fellow inmates in holding filters watched me with cold stares, as if they already cast their judgment while I was still calling out my innocence. In that dimly lit, holding cell, I hugged my knees to my chest on a metal bench. The walls were cinderblock gray, and the constant hum of a nearby fan echoed in my ears. My mind replayed the past 24 hours. The innocent laugh I shared with friends at the campus cafe, the simple text I sent my girlfriend that afternoon, the routine that now felt like another lifetime. The cruelest blow was imagining how quickly rumor would spread, paint me guilty before I even had a chance to speak. I tried to steady my breath and calm the panic rising in my throat. I knew deep down that I was innocent, but who would believe a 20-year-old kid once one word like rape leaves an officer's mouth? My stomach churned as I thought about my family waking up to the news, my mom checking her phone, seeing my mugshot, and choking back tears. The weight of injustice settled on me like a lead blanket. And yet, even in that moment of pure terror, a single question refused to let me surrender. What if somewhere, out there, a piece of evidence, like a security camera, could set the truth free? As the cell door clanged shut behind another arrival, I whispered to myself, I have to hold on. I have to find that proof. And with that faint glimmer of hope, the darkest chapter of my life truly began. The next morning at the precinct, I was led into a small, sterile interview room. The walls were painted a prison-issue gray, and the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Across the table sat a detective whose expression never wavered as he slid a photo frame toward me. "Do you recognize this woman?" he asked. My heart sank when I saw her face. A classmate I'd spoken to once at a campus party. "We have her statement," he continued, "that you attacked her outside the dorm last Thursday." A knot formed in my stomach. "That's impossible," I said, voice cracking. "I was at work. Until midnight. You can check the timestamp on the register." The detective's eyes narrowed. "We already have her testimony," he said, in a tone that brooked no argument. I pulled out my phone to show call logs, but he waved it away. "We'll get to that. For now, you need to answer questions." I felt a cold dread fill me. Already, it seemed as if my evidence didn't matter. In the holding cell later that day, I sat on the narrow metal bench, clutching a scorchingly cold cup of coffee. My mind raced with anxiety and anger. The young woman's accusation hung over me like a storm cloud. One word, rape, poised to drown out every other truth. I replayed our interactions. Polite hellos in the library, group study sessions. How could any of that be twisted into what the prosecution claimed? A bail hearing was scheduled for the following morning. My public defender, an overworked lawyer named Malik Henderson, arrived in the same drab conference room where I had been interrogated. He flipped through a manila envelope containing police reports and witness statements. "They're pushing for $500,000 bail," he said flatly. I blinked, stunned. $500,000? My voice echoed against the walls. "I can't even afford rent, let alone bail." Malik leaned forward. They'll keep you locked up if you can't make bail. We need to challenge the evidence as soon as possible." At the bail hearing, the judge peered at me over her glasses, weighing me like a pound of meat. The prosecutor painted me as a predatory threat, insisting that I was dangerous to the community. My defense lawyer tried to argue my part-time job and lack of criminal history, but the judge's gavel hit the bench hard when she set bail at $500,000 cash. As they led me back to the cell, the realization hit me. I was about to lose my freedom simply because my family couldn't magically produce $500,000. Confined once again to that unforgiving cell, I felt my world shrink to the size of those 4 gray walls. The day shifted into night, and the night back into day, but nothing felt real anymore. Other inmates whispered rumors of the accusation, as if their words could make it true. I could practically taste the judgment like bile on my tongue, though I still clung to a single thought: I will prove them wrong. My family, desperate, began soliciting help from neighbors and church groups. My mother's voice trembled during our weekly phone call. "Jason, we're doing everything we can. But it's the camera footage from the dorm entrance. You have to remind them. You were nowhere near that area." I closed my eyes, fighting tears. "I know, Mom. I know. We'll get it. I just need one chance to show the truth." As I lay on the hard bench that night, sleep evading me, I realized that the true battle was only beginning. The accusation was a wedge between who I was and what I stood for. The system, designed to protect, had already turned against me. But I vowed, in the quiet of that cell, that I would not let this false charge define my life. Somehow, I would find that security footage and let it speak the truth. The first morning in the cell block felt endless. A clang of metal doors echoed down the corridor as an officer yelled, "Wake up! Roll call in 5. I sat up on the narrow bunk, my wrists still raw from the handcuffs, and stared at the cinder block wall in front of me. The other inmates shuffled around, yawning or mumbled indistinct greetings. Everything smelled of antiseptic and despair, stale air, body odor, and the faint whiff of cold metal. In that moment, I realized my youth had been swallowed by this gray tomb. After roll call, we shuffled into a line for breakfast, a tray of soggy scrambled eggs, cold grits, and a cup of watery coffee. The tray slid across the slot in my cell door, and I stared at the food with numbness, knowing it would be another day of barely nourishing. Meals. Across the small table sat a lanky inmate named Carson, who whispered, "You look fresh." First time, I nodded, too guarded to speak. Carson had been here for armed robbery, but at least a robbery was something he did. My crime was something I never did, and that felt worse. By mid-morning, the yard doors clanged open, and we filed outside into a concrete yard with razor wire fences towering overhead. I watched a group of inmates toss a battered basketball, their movements familiar. After only a day, I stood at the fence and stared at the sky, a sliver of pale blue between the fence wires. I tried to recall campus life, sunlit sidewalks, laughter with friends. Yet those memories felt distant, like a dream I might never reclaim. Back in my cell, I tried to make sense of the paperwork the public defender had given me. Witness statements, police reports, and a notation that my alibi might be verifiable, if only someone had recorded camera footage the night of the alleged assault. I flipped through the pages like they were a foreign language, searching for hope in the fine print. Every time I found a discrepancy, an unclear timestamp, conflicting detail, I felt a flicker of something, a possibility that I might not remain here forever. In the afternoon, the inmates were escorted to the prison library. It was a musty room with peeling paint and 3 worn bookshelves. I sat at a rickety table next to Carson, who quietly told me stories of how he'd survived. His first 6 months, he advised, "Keep your head down, keep your mouth shut, know your rights." Then he leaned in closer and added in a hushed voice, "If you've got proof coming, don't talk to the guards. They'll bury it." His words resonated. If I was ever going to see that security tape, I needed to act smart. That night, as the lights dimmed and the clank of cell bars shutting resonated through the block, I lay on my bunk with only the dim glow of a single bulb. My mind drifted back to the campus dorm, how I'd waved goodnight to classmates just 4 days ago. Now I felt like a ghost haunting a place I no longer belonged. Fear gnawed at me. Would I wake up here a year from now, still branded a rapist? Yet, in the darkness, a silent determination stirred. If they wouldn't let me speak, I would find a way to make the evidence speak for me. In the days that followed, I watched closely as guards moved through our block. I learned their routines when they unlocked, the cells when they changed shifts, when the guard station's back door was slightly ajar. I took mental notes, hoping to use that knowledge later. If I could find a way to get a letter or document to my lawyer, one that specifically mentioned the security footage, maybe it would be my ticket out. I clung to that plan like a lifeline, each detail of prison life feeding my resolve. Yet even as I plotted my next moves, the emotional toll weighed me down. Some nights, I lay awake, listening to other inmates' sobs echo through the corridors. I held the thin blanket close, my heart aching for my family's faith in me. But amid the fear, the routine, and the loneliness, I vowed that I would not let this place break me. I would find that camera tape, prove my innocence, and reclaim the life that had been stolen. After nearly 3 months incarcerated, the walls of that prison began to feel like part of my skin, cold concrete seeping into my bones. Each morning I awoke to the same ritual: roll call, sparse breakfast, and the bitter knowledge that I was still fighting for a chance to breathe free air. Sleep became a distant memory, replaced by nightmares in which I wandered the campus halls, shouting my innocence while no one would listen. I watched other young men here, some hardened, others bewildered, yet none accused of a crime they never committed. Their conversations circled around plea deals, behavioral records, and parole hearings. I often sat alone, flipping through the pages of my old journal from home, searching for solace in my own words. Every entry from before my arrest now felt like evidence of the life that had been cruelly snatched away. One afternoon, my public defender, Malik, managed to slip me a note during visiting hours. He wrote that he'd discovered a potential lead. A university security officer recalled that the cameras covering the dorm courtyard had captured activity the night of the alleged assault. This was the first concrete sign that I might have a shot at clearing my name. My hands trembled as I read and reread those words, tears threatening to fall. But I also knew how bureaucracy worked. Obtaining that footage would be a battle. The prosecution initially resisted. They claimed the tapes were unavailable or archived over. I felt a flicker of dread. Had they erased the one thing that could save me? Late that night, I pressed my forehead against the cool cell bars and whispered a prayer, pleading for a miracle. I refused to give up, even though hope felt like a fragile ember in a hurricane. Over the next weeks, Malik filed motions and subpoenas demanding the raw security footage. He documented every request, citing legal precedent and civil rights regulations. I watched him move mountains from behind those bars, telephone calls, letters, and in-person visits, each one a lifeline thrown my way. My sole focus became keeping him updated with any new detail I'd uncovered. A building access log, a witness who remembered seeing me studying in the library at the time of the crime. Finally, 2 weeks before my scheduled preliminary hearing, Malik called with news. The university's legal counsel had reluctantly produced the CCTV files. It was only 15 seconds of grainy black and white footage, but it was enough. Those frames would show that I entered the dorm lobby 15 minutes after the alleged incident, making it literally impossible for me to have been there. I felt my heart surge. Hope roared back to life. The night before the hearing, I sat on my bunk, replaying every second of that footage in my mind. I pictured how it would look on the courtroom screen, me walking side by side with my roommate, hair damp from the rain, laughing as if nothing was wrong. In my dreams, I watched the jury's faces change from suspicion to shock as the grainy image revealed the truth. I recalled Malik's calm but resolute promise. Tomorrow, we show them you were elsewhere. As dawn broke, I closed my eyes and whispered to myself, Monica, I'll be home soon. My younger sister's unwavering belief in me had kept me alive through the darkest moments. I ran a hand over the yellowed pages of my journal, my own testimony of innocence. With the camera footage as my shield and Malik's tenacity at my side, I felt a fierce determination. I would fight this lie until every last doubt was erased. The morning of the hearing felt electric with tension. As I sat in the courthouse hallway, clad in a gray jumpsuit and handcuffs, my heart pounded so fiercely I thought it might break free from my chest. Malik arrived early, his tie hastily knotted, folders of evidence under his arm. He offered me a brief nod of confidence, whispering, "They can't ignore the tape. Let's do this." I swallowed hard, steeling myself for the fiercest battle I'd ever face. Inside the courtroom, the air smelled of polished wood and stale coffee. Sunlight filtered through high windows, casting long shadows on the hardwood floor. The judge, a stern woman with silver hair, presided over the proceeding from her elevated bench. To my left, the prosecutor, an arrogant man known for his unyielding record, scrolled through his notes, already preparing his objections. I gripped the edge of the defense table, reminding myself to breathe. Malik rose first and delivered a concise opening statement. Your Honor, today we will demonstrate that my client, Jason Robinson, was not present at the scene of the alleged crime. We have obtained unedited security footage from the dorm lobby, time-stamped at 11:15 p.m. on the night in question, 15 minutes after the alleged assault occurred across campus. The prosecutor frowned, confusion flickering in his eyes as he protested. Your Honor, this footage is irrelevant to the state's timeline. The judge tapped her gavel, prompting silence. Continue, counsel. Malik called the university's security officer, Officer Chen, to the stand. Clad in a crisp uniform with two-way radio clipped to his belt, Chen testified that he personally retrieved and preserved the exact 15 seconds of footage. He described how he watched the digital files over his home computer and recognized Jason's distinctive hoodie and backpack. In court, the video was cued on a large screen behind the bench, waiting for Malik's cue. When Malik played the footage, the room fell silent. Grainy black and white images showed a thin figure heading down a well-lit corridor carrying a stack of textbooks. The digital timestamp in the corner read 11:15:23 p.m. Across the gallery, my parents stiffened in their seats, tears brimming in my mother's eyes. On the stand, I squeezed my fists until my knuckles went white, feeling every second stretch into an eternity. The prosecutor seized his opportunity. "Your Honor, the video is blurred and inconclusive. We cannot positively identify the defendant." But Malik was prepared. He pointed out specific markers. The university-issued lanyard around my neck, the identical pattern on my backpack, evidence bolstered by next-day photos of me wearing the same attire in the student lounge. Slowly, the prosecutor's objections lost force as each detail dispelled doubt. The gallery, packed with students, neighbors, and my family, watched with rapt attention. Finally, the judge leaned forward, eyes fixed on the screen. She turned to me and asked, "Mr. Robinson, is that you in the footage?" My voice cracked, but I replied truthfully, "Yes, Your Honor. That was me walking to my dorm room after studying for finals." She then addressed the prosecutor. "Given this direct evidence that the defendant was off campus during the alleged assault, I hereby grant the motion to vacate the charges. Mr. Robinson is free to go." The gavel hit the bench with thunderous finality. A swell of relief crashed through my chest as handcuffs clicked open. I blinked back tears while Malik directed me to stand. My parents rushed forward, enveloping me in a tearful embrace. Outside the courtroom, the cool air felt like the first real breath I'd taken in months. Though the legal battle was far from over, civil suits, expungement hearings, and lingering reputational damage remained, the hardest part was behind me. The tape that once seemed like a flicker of hope had shattered the nightmare, setting me on the road back to life. Leaving the courthouse that day felt surreal. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows of the lobby, and for the first time in months, I didn't flinch at the sight of uniformed officers. My mom held onto my arm like she'd never let go, tears still streaming down her cheeks. My dad's face was a mixture of relief and lingering worry. "Welcome home, son," he whispered, and I knew he meant more than just leaving criminal proceedings behind. It was a welcome, back to the life that had been stolen from me. In the weeks following my release, I returned to the small apartment I once shared with my first real camera. Stepping inside, I felt the weight of memories, Polaroids on the fridge, half-finished rolls of film waiting to be developed. I picked up my camera, its familiar weight giving me a sense of stability I hadn't felt in months. I carefully cleaned the lens, each swipe feeling like a promise that I would capture truth, not just for myself, but for anyone wronged by hasty judgment. I reconnected with Monica, my girlfriend, whose unwavering faith in my innocence had been my anchor. She greeted me with a warm hug and a jar of freshly brewed lemonade, my favorite. As I recounted every courtroom detail to her, her eyes shone not only with love but with pride. She spoke of the nights she stood by my family, raising funds, attending hearings, and never once doubting that the real me would emerge. I realized then that my journey wasn't just about clearing my name, it was about honoring her loyalty and the sacrifice my family made in my darkest hours. One evening, my high school art teacher, Mrs. Thompson, called and asked me to speak at a college campus forum about wrongful convictions. Standing behind a podium in the very lecture hall I once sat in, I saw a sea of faces. Students, professors, and local journalists, eager to hear how a 15-second video changed my destiny. My voice wavered at first as I described the fear of being labeled a rapist for a crime I didn't commit. But as I shared how that grainy footage shattered falsehoods, the room fell into a hushed reverence. After the lecture, a young woman approached me with tears in her eyes. She told me her brother was serving time on drug charges he insisted he didn't commit. "Your story gives me hope," she said. "I believe in second chances now." In that moment, I understood the power of my experience. It wasn't only about exoneration. It was about inspiring others to fight for justice, to refuse to be defined by false labels, and to cling to even the faintest glimmer of truth. I decided to create Lens of Truth, a nonprofit organization that partners with legal aid groups and journalism students to investigate wrongful convictions. We began by raising funds to help small towns install and maintain security cameras in public spaces, ensuring that future cases would have clear evidence when needed. My photography degree, once a dream on hold, became a tool to document stories of those still behind bars. Each image, each interview, was a testament to the idea that truth could not be buried forever. As months turned to a year, I found new purpose in mentoring high school seniors interested in journalism and criminal justice. I taught them to ask the right questions, to look beyond official narratives, and to value the human face behind every headline. Seeing them grasp the importance of evidence and empathy filled me with hope that a generation would rise who refused to accept injustice as inevitable. Now, as I sit at my desk in my small studio apartment, camera by my side, legal briefs stacked neatly, I reflect on the journey that transformed me. I was once a scared, wounded kid facing an unimaginable nightmare. Today, I'm a speaker, an advocate, and a photographer committed to shining light into darkness. If you or someone you know has faced a wrongful conviction, remember, the truth matters, and with patience and perseverance, the real story can and will be revealed.